Welcome to another edition of the Hawk Off the Press podcast. I'm your host, Gazette Hawkeyes reporter John Steffi. I'm excited to welcome back to the podcast Detroit News Michigan football beat writer and maybe the last person with an AOL email, Angelique Chingelis. Thanks for joining me.
Excuse me, you were the one who couldn't find the how to record this, so you're like looking all over for the record button. So I think we're even.
Hey, I haven't had my coffee yet as we record this. That's my excuse.
Well, it is an excuse. Yeah, I mean, I'm sorry I have AOL. If it ain't broke, I have a 12-year-old car. Again, if it ain't broke, it's sort of my thing.
I'm now going to get like 8 emails from people with AOL email addresses standing up for you here.
Well, I hope so. You're being a hater, and I'm not sure why.
Well, an interesting matchup this week. Michigan, Iowa, Big Ten championship game, rematch of 2021. You've had an interesting year at Michigan. Jim Harbaugh's first game back on the sidelines. I'm assuming that's kind of been the talk of Ann Arbor this week.
Yeah, I don't know what you're talking about. Why has it been interesting? Nothing's been going on. Yes, yeah. I mean, this is his second 3-game suspension of the year. So he's coached six games. I mean, he's been at practices, so it's just games only that he's missed for these 2 separate suspensions. But yes, the fact that he's going to be back on Saturday night against Iowa has been the talk, and the players are happy that Harbaugh will be back on the sideline. But they did pretty well with Sharon Moore filling in as the acting head coach, and got that win against Ohio State, got the win at Penn State when that was a crazy morning. I mean, they're trying to, the lawyers for Harbaugh and the university are trying to get a temporary restraining order to block the Big Ten suspension. And like 2 hours before, we're in traffic and I'm getting text messages saying no hearing. So they weren't going to weigh in on it. And so I thought that was, I thought what Sharon Moore did at Penn State was maybe, I mean, obviously beating Ohio State significant, but doing it, thinking the Harbaugh's about to get on the bus, but no, he's not going to go. And you got to go to the stadium and be the head coach. I thought that was pretty crazy.
No dull moments.
So none.
This offense seems pretty solid here. Let's start with quarterback position. JJ McCarthy, second year as the starter after beating out the guy on the Iowa sidelines, Cade McNamara. What kind of does JJ McCarthy add, and how is he different than maybe what Iowa fans saw from McNamara 2 years ago in this game?
Yeah, I mean, JJ he was just named the Big Ten's quarterback of the year, and he started out this season, I think this, extremely accurate. I mean, just, boom, 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 making all these completions. And then game 3 against Bowling Green, he has 3 interceptions. And then, I think that humbled him a little bit because there was so much talk about his completion percentage leading the country. And I think since then he's played really admirably. And obviously he's had a little bit of a lower leg issue. Penn State, he came up a little hobbled, ankle, maybe knee, and maybe hindered him a little bit at Maryland, but he looked okay against Ohio State. And he does add that wrinkle. He can run and he likes it. And he likes also mixing it up a little bit, which I don't think the coaches like, because he had a hockey background. I mean, he likes to get physical. And this year, I think he's learned to slide, not try to avoid a lot of that contact. But he is, and I think he's got a couple really good targets now. I mean, he's got Roman Wilson is healthy and making some tremendous receptions, and the tight ends. I mean, Colston Loveland and AJ Barner. So he has a lot of different weapons. There's no Marvin Harrison Jr. on this team, but there are some pretty good weapons. And JJ's been much more accurate, and I think not turnover prone. I mean, you look at I think that was an anomaly, the Bowling Green game. And then he had the pick more recently, but yeah, I think he's been pretty careful.
It seems like from a distance, it seems like Blake Corum has just been there forever because Iowa's played him now. I think this is the 3rd time. Seems like, okay, maybe not quite the same efficiency as past years when you're looking at yards per carry, but still quite the admirable season for him.
Yeah, I mean, and he's healthy, like going into he talked so much last week about never being healthy to play Ohio State. Obviously, he had that season-ending injury the week before against Illinois, and got in for 2 plays and realized he just couldn't do it, and had surgery right before the Big Ten title game last year. So he's finally healthy for this game. Yeah, they have used him differently. I mean, he's got 22 rushing touchdowns, mostly short yard. I mean, just obviously he had the 22-yarder after Zach Zinner was injured the other day, but mostly they've been short yardage touchdowns. I think that they were hoping for a little bit more balance from Donovan Edwards, and that's been a little bit slower happening. Donovan's been getting better, I think, these last few games, and then they have Kalel Mullings, but Blake Corum's the heart of this running offense, and maybe in some ways the offense. And yeah, it does feel like he's been here a long time. I mean, if he hadn't been injured, I don't think he would be here this year. And so yeah, I mean, I think people keep saying, well, he's not as explosive. Yeah, no, he's not. But I think he's shown the wheels a few times, so I don't think it's completely absent. So
The offensive line has been getting quite a few Joe Moore awards, it seems, lately. How does that kind of position group look this season?
Well, I mean, I keep saying it, this is not a Joe Moore Award winning line. It's just different. I think Oluwatimi at center last year, obviously won the Remington. He was a great asset, and that's not a knock on Drake Nugent, but this line just isn't as I mean, I know they're in the running, but this just isn't as good of an offensive line. And they've had some issues, and obviously losing Zach Zinner, who I think is their best offensive lineman. They had to move Carson Barnard. This guy's played all over. He's played left tackle, right tackle. He's been at both guard spots. So it looks like he will shift from right tackle, as he did at the end of after Zinter's injury last week, shift to right guard. Trente Jones comes in at right tackle. They've got Ladarius Henderson, a transfer at left tackle. So they've got 2 transfers on this line. And it's been serviceable. I mean, that might be even too critical, but it's a good line. It's not a great line. And I think when people were pointing the finger at, well, where's the running game? I think they kept pointing at Blake and Donovan, and I'm like, no, you got to look at this offensive line. There were times that Donovan Edwards was running hard to a hole that he expected to be there and it wasn't. So they held their own, obviously, against Ohio State. They responded after the Zinner injury with a 22-yard Corum touchdown run. So, I'm really curious to see how it holds up against Iowa's defense, because, that's a top-notch defense, and see if it exposes some of the weaknesses on the line.
Then kind of flipping sides here to Michigan defense versus Iowa offense. Looks like Michigan, statistically at least, one of the better teams in the country in terms of stopping the run. Are there going to be Iowa has sometimes gotten those big play opportunities in the ground game. Do you see those happening against Michigan, or is this kind of going right into their forte?
Well, I mean, I think, Ohio State was trying to run the ball last week, and I thought that they got some, I mean, Trevion got some good yardage, and yeah, this is a very good Michigan defense, and it's different than some of the previous, there's no Aiden Hutchinson and no David Ojabo racking up 25 sacks, combined. But that's, I think, the beauty of this defense is that there's so much depth, and there is a very significant rotation, and you're getting contributions all over the place. Their interior is very strong. I mean, you look at Chris Jenkins, you look at Kenneth Grant, you look at Mason Graham. Those guys are really good, and the last 2 are young. They're sophomores. So, I mean, I think the guy I always talk about, Jalen Harrell, I mean, I think he was honorable mention Big Ten, and I thought, wow, I mean, to me, he's been a catalyst for so much that's happened. I mean, he forced the last interception last week that sealed the game for Michigan against Ohio State. He's just a very disruptive player, and that was their focus in the offseason. And it was one thing Jesse Minter said, that they studied the Iowa defense a lot. They looked at what they did, and they wanted to be more disruptive this year and getting hands up, trying to get in the I guess just disrupt the quarterback as much as possible. And they picked up some things from Iowa. So I just, the linebackers have been good. They're a little banged up. And their secondary is good. But yeah, I mean, there's going to be some room to run, but Michigan's strength is making a team one-dimensional, and then it's just, it's tough for any offense.
Deacon Hill, probably this would be the toughest test for him. This Michigan secondary, you were mentioning that they were good. Is there a weakness there, or is it kind of just another really tough matchup here?
Well, I mean, it's hard to say because Michigan hasn't been tested by great quarterbacks. I mean, McCord was very good. Um, but it's like Will Johnson's a little hobbled. He didn't play most of the second half. He's their top corner. But you've got Mike Sainristil, who is just like he's again kind of like Carson Barnhart on the offensive line. He's versatile. They can move him from nickel to corner, and I think he's been someone who's been just such a steadying influence on the defense. But Will Johnson, he practiced this week. They would like to get him some reps. I'm just not sure how much Iowa's offense is going to test the Michigan secondary. I could be wrong, but I'm thinking that won't be the matchup to watch.
Yeah, I don't think so either. When Deacon Hill has shown improvement at times this year, but then a pretty big setback going, I think 38 or 39% completion against Nebraska. You're not going to go from that Nebraska defense, which is good, but now you're going to better Michigan defense. Yeah, that's doesn't seem to be a favorable matchup there, but you never know.
Yeah, I mean, it's really a function of the pressure that the defensive line gets on the quarterback, and that's where Michigan's been really successful and frees up. I mean, that's how it works. I mean, if it's going to be done well, and so they have done that well, and they haven't put as much pressure on the secondary. I mean, Will Johnson covered Marvin Harrison, and he had his moments, and he also had some moments where he struggled. So I don't think Iowa has that kind of threat. Unless you tell me otherwise. I don't think they have a Marvin Harrison either. So I think everybody would love to have that. That would be, I always wonder if JJ McCarthy had Marvin Harrison. Like that would be a tremendous combination.
Oh yeah.
A big one. If they have an all-star team, maybe they should have like a Big Ten all-star team playing like an SEC all-star team. That would be kind of fun.
That would be fun. Like, I realize that probably injury wise, okay, you have that, but at the very least, like you could make that a senior like showcase, like a pre-draft showcase.
Yeah, it's not going to work, but it'd be fun.
Yeah. Never probably in a million years, but we can dream.
Yeah, I think it'd be awesome. I mean, to see the best of the best out there, that would be pretty cool.
Now, one of the things I wrote about as kind of a key to the game was whether Iowa could strike early, just because you can see the difference between the games where Iowa did at least get into opposing territory and the games where they didn't. Now, it looks like Michigan also is a team that kind of gets out to those early starts. How much has that helped them in terms of kind of just running away with some of these games through this 12-0 stretch?
Yeah, no, it's definitely helped. And they like to get together those really long, grinded out drives too. And that's been effective for them. It was not until the Maryland game. I mean, they were still holding teams scoreless in the third quarter. So they were coming out, pretty quick in the second to open the second half too. So yeah, I mean, of course, I think that's always a big deal if a team can move the ball early and take the crowd out, all those things. I look at turnovers too. I mean, I think Michigan's really, I forget what they're like number 6 nationally in turnover margin. I know that's something Kirk Ferentz stressed. If they can get a couple turnovers against Michigan, that changes obviously the complexion of the game. But definitely starting out fast for both teams is key. And if Iowa can do it against Michigan's defense, I think that I will say this. I was going to say that might get in their heads a little bit. I don't think, and I consider all the things off the field that this Michigan team has had to deal with. They don't seem to get like rattled very easily, even, with all the noise outside, but even on the field, if they're feeling like there's a little pressure on them, I haven't seen that happen. So I'd be curious if Iowa got out to a lead because, Michigan hasn't had to come back. So if that happens, how would they deal with it?
Hard to get much better than, was it 25-1 in the last 2 seasons?
Yeah, that's pretty good, isn't it?
Yeah. Do you have a score prediction yet? Well, before I ask score prediction, I am not doing justice as an Iowa football reporter without asking about special teams. How could I possibly forget that? Michigan has had some pretty good special teams units over the years. Is this one of them?
It's different. Yeah, I mean, because you just got so used to Jake Moody, Money Moody, and Brad Robbins punting, and Tommy Doman has been an exceptional asset punting. And then James Turner really hadn't. He just never. I always forget he's there. I mean, they haven't used him like they used Jake Moody, and they had to use Jake Moody. Their red zone. They struggled last year at times. And he was impressive last week. He came in, he was 3 for 3, and he had a 50-yarder. So he's attempted 3 50-plus, and he's made 2 50-yarders, missed on a 52-yarder. But yeah, I mean, I could easily tell you Jake Moody, but it's just you hadn't heard much about James Turner. And, transferred in from Louisville. He's a local guy, went to Saline, right next to Ann Arbor. And boy, what a contribution he made last week against Ohio State. So very solid. And they've got Samaj Morgan returning kicks, and they've got their kick coverage has gotten better too, I think, as the season's gone on. Caden Kolesar got hurt last year at Iowa, and their long snapper, and those guys are back. So you get somebody like, I mean, those two are just so efficient. So I think that they've been very solid.
Okay, now we have that really important base covered. Now, do you have a score prediction?
I don't, and I don't know why I haven't even thought about it. I think I'm so behind on all my work that I haven't thought about it. I was put on the spot, for Ohio State last week, and I came up with 24-21. I don't, I know what the score was 2 years ago when they played, but they're both really good defenses. And all right, you're gonna put me on the spot. I'm gonna say 34-13.
Okay, I have 31-6.
Oh, see, I don't know. Okay, I'm gonna stick with this now. You made me put me on the spot. Now I've got to try to imagine why that came to my head.
I could see that kind of, both were in the same ballpark there. I could see that kind of game though, where I thought I saw somebody was having a crazy low first half over under or something for Iowa.
Right.
And Iowa's, they have some opportunities to score. It is a long football game.
Of course.
You look at it, I don't think anybody's doubting that Michigan is the superior team here. And I think everyone remembers what happened 2 years ago. And I don't think it's going to be quite as ugly as 2 years ago.
I agree.
But it seems like this is a situation where a few things go out of line and all of a sudden it could go down that route quickly.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and that's where turnovers come into play. But, Iowa can certainly generate turnovers. So, yeah, I mean, it would be, of course, it would be amazing if Cade McNamara was playing and Eric All. That would have been the perfect storyline. And the offense would look so much different with those two and a couple other injuries I think Iowa has. So on offense. So that's disappointing because it would have felt like just a much bigger game in that sense. But so you said 34-6?
I said 31-6.
31-6. Okay. All right. We are in the same ballpark, so I don't feel like a complete idiot. But, I really hadn't thought about a score. But, I do wonder, there's a little bit of a hangover, after Ohio State. Is this team going to be, the Michigan team, going to be revved up to win a third straight Big Ten championship? I think they are. I mean, I've said it earlier. This team has been just the most, and all the years I've covered Michigan football, just the most balanced emotionally and terrific leadership. And I think that scene when Zach Zinner was injured, that really, I think people have talked about that a lot. It really did show you what they've been talking about all season, that they have each other's back, that they are there for each other. And I know it's all cliche to say all these things, but that was I think that moment really kind of crystallized what this team is about.
Well, Angelique, thanks for joining me.
Well, thanks, John. I appreciate you looking down your nose at someone who still uses an AOL account and allowed me to join you. So thank you.
And thanks to all of our listeners for tuning in.
Roger says thank you too.
The people who are just listening on audio are really missing out on Angelique's cutout of Roger Federer in the background.
And then my Cincinnati Bengals stuff over there. So yeah.
First time I was thinking, is that actually a person back there? But no.
It's true. In 2020, when we were doing only Zooms, I think it was like we would talk to coaches, and I could tell they would always be like looking over my. And finally, Jay Harbaugh was like, "Is that Roger Federer?" And I'm like, finally, somebody knew who it was. So these guys don't follow tennis, but it does it kind of makes it creepy. So I kind of like it because it was definitely getting their attention, and they were a little worried about it.
And thanks to all of our listeners for tuning in, AOL email addresses or otherwise. Until next time, we will talk Hawks later.